Good afternoon. Welcome back. It is Thursday, December 7th, 2023. We have a handful of birthdays and a couple of events to talk about. But of course, biggest event back in 1941, Pearl Harbor. So this is a bit of a day of remembrance. Uh, Best I can tell, I had a great uncle that was in that conflict. He did survive. I don't think he was injured, but he was in that. When it happened, I never did get to talk to him much about it because I didn't know he was in it. My brother later gave me that information after he had passed, and I would like to talk to him for a few minutes, but it definitely a day of remembrance for the many that were lost on that day so many years ago. Anyway, moving forward, I just wanted to have a brief moment of silence there out of respect. But we're going to move forward there with a couple of events. 2008 Snowball Derby, once again, Pensacola, Florida, won by Augie Grill. Don't know what happened to that driver. I've heard the name a couple times, but not sure where Augie is at today. And on this day in 2014, John Hunter Nemechek wins the Snowball Derby. So probably the next 4, 5, 6 days, we're going to be talking about Snowball Derby a lot in Pensacola. And then I'm going to guess the last 2 or 3 weeks of the year, if we have 3 events in the last 2 weeks, I'd be really surprised. So let's go with some birthdays. Born on this date in 1928, sadly died in a homicide in 1988 that, to my knowledge, to this day remains unsolved. Mickey Thompson. You might remember the name Mickey Thompson. He was part of that awesome indoor off-road series, the stadium trucks, the kind of the precursor to like what Robbie Gordon's doing now. They had some really neat events that would be held inside of dome stadiums, like the Superdome. I know they held some up here in the Hoosier Dome, the Pontiac Silverdome, just wherever they could get dirt barriers and an indoor facility. They put on some great events. Born on this day in 1930, this gentleman is still alive, does TTM. Of course, wasn't happy about the TTM I got back from this man, but it happens. Mr. Bob Tullius. Bob was a owner in the sports car world, IMSA series, owned the Jaguar teams, the Group 44 team, then moved that team to Cup in the late 80s, ran just a little over a year, and then they shut it down. Had a top 10 finish with Jim Sauter on a road course, Watkins Glen. That was pretty crazy. Born on this day in 1939, John A. Utsman. Now, many of you probably going, who's John Utsman? John A. Utsman. There was an set of Utsman brothers, John and Lehman, and I can't remember all of them. There's so many of them. But John A. Utsman raced a lot in the Sportsman series back before it became the Busch series. But John's biggest milestone in racing was he was a relief driver for Benny Parsons in 1973 at Bristol. John ended up wheeling the car to victory lane that day for Benny, and it was the only victory that Benny Parsons had in his championship season. So let's go to some birthdays. I'm going to start on this date in 1993. Former part-time Xfinity Series driver. I think he still races part-time here and there. Mr. Dylan Lupton. I think he might have had one full-time season, but I don't remember a lot from his career. I know he ran, just mid-pack, but that was during that era of, a lot more cars than there are now, and you still had a few more Cup guys in there, so the fields were a little tighter. Next one, born on this date, 1986, current co-owner of Alpha Prime Racing in the Xfinity Series, Mr. Tommy Joe Martins. I'd like to see Tommy Joe get a little bit more sponsorship, be able to move that team up the competition chart. They're just on that cusp of becoming a regular top 10, top 12 team. If they get a little bit more finances, and get their driver lineup a little bit more stabilized, I think week in, week out, 2 or 3 of their cars would be 10th, 12th, 14th every single week. And our final birthday, born on this date in 1940, sadly passed away in 1917, Mr. Paul Budmore, aka Little Budmore. Not related to Walter Budmore, the legendary NASCAR car owner, but was active during part of the same time. He had a second place finish as his best finish. Doesn't tell us where, but he did have a second place finish back, I believe, in the 60s. I remember reading about it in the 40 Years of Stock Car Racing magazine. And he also raced in that NASCAR Winston Legends race on the quarter-mile oval of Charlotte in 1991. I recommend you look that one up. That's a pretty fun event, too. But anyway, that has been birthdays and events for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, thanks again for watching. Really, really do appreciate it. And we will see you tomorrow.